Look at this thing. Just look at it. That front fascia, those swept headlights cutting across the nose like something you'd see on a Le Mans prototype, that roofline that rises and flows like it was shaped in a wind tunnel, not a motorhome factory. The way the white bodywork catches light and rolls it across the panel like liquid. This is not a bus. This is not a camper. This is something else entirely. Now, before we get into it, I want to be upfront about something, because I think it actually makes this more interesting, not less. What you're looking at is an AI-generated concept design. Nobody built this. No factory, no production line, no showroom anywhere on Earth has one of these sitting in it. It's pure imagination rendered into something that looks disturbingly real. And that's exactly why it deserves a serious breakdown, because when a designer has zero real-world limitations, zero budget constraints, zero safety regulations breathing down their neck, this is what the human imagination reaches for. So here's what we're doing today. Full walk around, front to rear, then we're going to figure out what's almost certainly happening inside based on those exterior proportions, then the powertrain logic, and then my honest verdict. And stay with me, because there is one design detail on the side of this vehicle that I genuinely think is ahead of almost everything else in the concept space right now. I'm saving it for when we get there. Trust me, it's worth the wait. Let's go. Let's start right at the front, because the front of this concept is doing something really deliberate. The first thing you notice, and you can't not notice it, is that central fascia. It's this deep, sculpted, dark panel that sweeps wide and low across the nose, flanked by LED headlight signatures that pull upward and outward toward the windshield pillars. That shape is telling you something specific. It's not aggressive in the way a truck is aggressive. It's aggressive in the way a private jet is aggressive. Controlled, intentional, almost aristocratic, like it knows exactly how fast it could go and chooses not to brag about it. The headlights themselves have this layered, multi-element look. You can see amber and white light signatures sitting in deep housing recesses, framed by gloss black surrounds. In the real world, something like this would almost certainly be full LED matrix, adaptive, auto-leveling, with individual pixel control for precise beam shaping at highway speed. In a vehicle this size, good lighting isn't just luxury, it's safety, and this design takes it seriously. Now look at that windshield. It's enormous. It wraps wide and pushes forward in a single curved sweep that would give the driver, and honestly anyone sitting near the cockpit, a panoramic view that you simply do not get in conventional motorhomes. Most motorhomes give you a flat vertical windshield that feels like looking through an aquarium wall. This concept is proposing something close to what fighter jet cockpit designers think about. Maximum visual field, maximum situational awareness, wrapped in something that looks extraordinary from outside. That's not easy to engineer, but the intent here is completely clear. Moving to the side profile, and this is where things get genuinely exciting. The proportions on this side are remarkable for a vehicle in this class. The roofline rises from the front, peaks slightly above the midsection, and then flows rearward in a long, elegant arc that resists the boxy slab look that kills almost every other motorhome concept visually. The designer has clearly been looking at coach-built supercar silhouettes, the way a Pagani or a Bugatti manages to make a large object look fast and light simultaneously. The principle is the same here. It just happens to be applied to something 40 feet long. The glass-to-body ratio on the habitable section, that long band of deep, dark glazing running the full living length of the vehicle, is extraordinary. And this is the detail I want you to really sit with, because it matters enormously to what life inside this thing would feel like. That glazing runs nearly uninterrupted from just behind the cockpit section all the way to the rear quarter. If those proportions are what they appear to be, we're looking at somewhere between 8 and 10 feet of continuous glass surface on each side of the living space. In human terms, that means natural light pouring in at every hour of the day. It means waking up in the morning and having a full landscape view from wherever you're sitting, whether that's a coffee in the kitchen or a book in the lounge. It means the space inside doesn't feel enclosed the way motorhomes almost always do. It feels like a loft on wheels, parked in Yellowstone, or the Dolomites, or a cliff edge in the Scottish Highlands. That's a transformative quality of life difference, and it's built entirely into glass and proportion. Now, the bodywork itself. The paint appears to be a deep pearl white, and it's applied over panels that are genuinely complex in their surface geometry. You can see how the light plays across the lower body, where the panel curves inward and then flows out again over the wheel arches. That kind of surface work, what designers call compound curvature, is expensive and technically demanding even on a sports car. On a vehicle this scale, it's a statement. It's saying, we treated this like a piece of automotive sculpture, not a box we needed to close up before the next trade show. The wheel and stance situation deserves its own moment. 6 wheels, 3 axles, multi-spoke polished alloy wheels that look like they belong on a high-end sports sedan, but scaled up to something in the 22 to 24-inch range based on proportions. The wheel arches are fully enclosed by sculpted body sections that flow down from the main panels in this beautiful organic curve. No exposed chassis, no raw undercarriage visible, no ugly gap between body and wheel. Everything is contained. Everything is resolved. The stance is wide, planted, and purposeful. This thing doesn't look like it would roll. It looks like it would anchor itself to the planet and dare the wind to argue about it. The ride height appears deliberately moderate, not lifted like an overland rig, not slammed like a show truck. It's sitting at what I'd call confident touring height, planted enough to look stable, high enough to suggest capability. That's the right call for a concept that seems to be positioning itself at the intersection of luxury liner and serious long-distance traveler. Now, before we move inside, a quick look at the rear, which I want to come back to in the verdict section because there's something happening back there that I think is underappreciated. From the 3/4 angle visible here, the rear continues the roofline cleanly, and the body appears to close with the same discipline as the front. No awkward chopped tail, no boxy termination. The designer had the confidence to carry the language all the way around, which is rarer than you'd think in concept work. The exterior alone puts this in a different conversation from almost anything else in the concept motorhome space. But honestly, the exterior is the easy part. What I think is happening inside this thing, based on those proportions and that design philosophy, that's where it gets genuinely interesting.
Now, here's where we do some detective work. We don't have interior shots of this concept, and honestly, that's fine, because based on everything we can read from the exterior, we can make some very educated deductions about what the designer was intending in there. This is one of my favorite parts of concept analysis, treating the exterior as a set of clues and following them inward. So, let's follow them. First, ceiling height. Look at that roofline from the side. The habitable section, the area behind the cockpit bulkhead to the rear, sits at a roof height that, if these proportions translate to real scale at roughly 40 feet of overall length, would put interior ceiling height at somewhere around 6 feet 4 to 6 feet 6 inches. That matters more than almost any other single dimension in a vehicle like this. That's the difference between feeling like you're living somewhere and feeling like you're folded into somewhere. Full stand-up height throughout the living section. Move freely. Cook without hunching. Walk from the lounge to the bedroom without thinking about your head. That's what that roofline is promising. Now let's talk about the living area layout logic. The glass band we looked at on the exterior tells us a lot. A designer who prioritizes that much continuous glazing on the side is making a philosophical commitment. Natural light is the primary luxury in this space. That almost certainly means the main lounge area is oriented toward the glass wall, with seating designed to face outward. Not the television, not an interior accent wall. The world outside. That's a camping philosophy translated into architectural language. When you park this at the edge of a canyon at sunset, your living room doesn't just have a view, it is the view. I'd expect the lounge section in the forward portion of the habitable area to feature low, wide seating, something close to what you'd find in a high-end private aviation cabin, with a central configuration that can convert between social and relaxed positions. Given the width this vehicle appears to carry, we're likely talking about a usable interior width of 8 feet plus. That is genuinely apartment-level space. Not cabin space, not camper space, apartment space. Moving rearward, the kitchen. In a concept with this level of design ambition, the kitchen won't be an afterthought tucked against a wall. Based on the proportions, I'd expect a galley-style layout running along one interior side, with integrated appliances, induction cooking surface, under-counter refrigeration, possibly a combination convection microwave unit integrated flush into cabinetry. The surface materials, if consistent with the exterior design language, would almost certainly be something like engineered stone or matte composite, surfaces that feel substantial, that don't rattle, that don't look cheap under the kind of natural light this glazing would pour in. No exposed edges, no visible handles. Everything flush and resolved. The thing about a kitchen in a vehicle like this is that it has to serve two completely different functions simultaneously. It has to be efficient enough for daily use on the road, practical, quick, compact. And it has to be impressive enough that when you open the door and let someone in at a campsite in Patagonia or a mountain pass in Norway, it doesn't make you apologize for where you live. This concept appears to understand that tension perfectly. Now, the sleeping quarters. Given the overall length and the layout logic, the most intelligent placement for the primary sleeping area is the rear section, acoustically isolated from the drivetrain, separated from the living area for privacy, benefiting from whatever rear glazing or high clerestory windows the roofline allows. I'd estimate a king-sized or near-king sleeping platform oriented across the vehicle width, with dedicated storage underneath and integrated lighting that gives you both functional task light and the kind of ambient warm lighting that tells your nervous system it's time to stop driving and start resting. And here's the camping angle that I love about a sleeping space like this. Imagine that rear window, blackout shading fully retracted, parked at elevation in a national park at midnight. No light pollution, full sky visible from your bed. That's not camping. That's something better than most hotel experiences most people will ever pay for. The bathroom in a concept of this size, and this is where I always find the most interesting engineering constraint conversations, would almost certainly be a wet bath design with a full-sized or near full-size shower. The width of this vehicle suggests there's no need to compromise to a combined toilet shower squeeze space. We're likely looking at a properly separated wet area with real fixtures, real water pressure from an onboard tank system, and probably heated flooring if we're being honest about what a designer with this level of ambition would specify. Now, the cockpit. That windshield we talked about on the exterior, from the inside, it would create a driving experience unlike anything in conventional motorhome design. The forward visibility would be wide, deep, and involving. I'd expect a driver interface that borrows heavily from the automotive world rather than the RV world. A clean, low instrument binnacle, a steering yoke or thin rim wheel, primary information delivered through a wide curved display rather than analog gauges, and secondary controls managed through a large central touchscreen, possibly gesture control integration, definitely camera-based mirror replacement. In a real production scenario, if someone were ever brave enough to build this, the driver assistance suite would need to be class-leading. Something this size, traveling at highway speed, needs active lane keeping, radar-based following, auto-braking, and ideally some degree of semi-autonomous capability on long interstate runs. The cockpit design seems to be anticipating exactly that kind of future. Smart home integration throughout. Climate zones, window tinting that adjusts automatically based on sun angle, lighting scenes that change by time of day, and connectivity that makes a cellular dead zone something you schedule around rather than suffer through. All of that feels consistent with what the exterior is saying about this concept's ambitions. This interior, as I imagine it, is not trying to replicate a house on wheels. It's trying to make the wheel-based life genuinely superior to the house-based one. That's an entirely different ambition, and based on every proportion and design decision visible from outside, I think it almost pulls it off. Almost. We'll get to the almost part in the verdict. But first, what would actually move this thing?
Let's talk about what would need to be under this concept to make it real. And I'll say this up front, this is where the fictional nature of the concept actually works in its favor, because a real manufacturer would face some genuinely serious engineering problems here, problems that are interesting to think through. First, the obvious question, electric or combustion? For a concept designed with this level of visual sophistication and apparent environmental awareness, that roofline, that glazing, that whole "we thought about everything" philosophy, I think the designer is clearly imagining an electric or hydrogen-electric hybrid powertrain. Combustion in a vehicle this refined would be like putting a diesel generator in a penthouse. Technically functional, completely wrong for the aesthetic. Now, here's the honest engineering reality. A vehicle this size and this heavy, and based on those proportions, we're almost certainly looking at something in the range of 30 to 40,000 kilograms fully loaded, would require a battery pack of enormous capacity to achieve meaningful range. In a near-future build scenario, you'd be looking at something in the 500 to 800 kilowatt-hour range to deliver 400 or more miles of real-world highway range. That technology is approaching feasibility. It's not there yet for a production vehicle at this scale, but it's approaching. The 6-wheel, 3-axle configuration you can see clearly in the exterior, that's not just a visual statement. In a real engineering scenario, that configuration allows for distributed electric motor placement, individual motors at each driven axle, torque vectoring, stability control at a level that a vehicle this size genuinely needs. It also distributes the weight of that enormous battery pack more evenly across the chassis, which improves both handling and reduces point loading on road surfaces. Smart design, even if unintentional. Now, the roof. That dark roof panel on the upper section of this concept has the visual characteristics of either a panoramic glass surface or an integrated solar array. If it's solar, and given the overall design philosophy, I'd lean towards solar, we're potentially looking at a surface area large enough to capture meaningful daily energy in good conditions. Realistically, roof-mounted solar on a vehicle this size could deliver somewhere between 3 to 6 kilowatt-hours per day of usable energy in full sun conditions. That won't charge your main battery pack significantly, but it absolutely extends your off-grid capability. Think about this for a second in camping terms. Parked in the Sonoran Desert for a week, full solar harvest every day. Climate control, lighting, cooking, and connectivity running entirely on captured sunlight. No hookups, no generator noise, no carbon footprint. Just silence, desert, and a vehicle that sustains itself. That's the promise embedded in a roof like that. Water systems, waste management, and connectivity infrastructure would all need to operate at the same level of ambition as the design language. Think substantial freshwater capacity, gray and black water management with real capacity, and satellite connectivity that doesn't depend on cellular towers for always-on internet. In 2025 and beyond, that technology exists and is increasingly affordable. In the world of this concept, it would be considered basic.
All right, here's where I tell you what I actually think. What this concept does genuinely well, almost breathtakingly well, is solve the visual identity problem that every motorhome concept has struggled with for decades. The visual identity problem is this: how do you make something large, boxy, and functionally constrained look like it belongs in the same conversation as the finest vehicles on Earth? This concept solves it. The swept front, the continuous glass band, the organic roofline, the resolved wheel arches. This doesn't look like a compromise, it looks like a decision, a very confident, very considered decision. The glass philosophy is the detail I find most impressive. That commitment to continuous side glazing across the habitable section isn't just aesthetically brave, it's philosophically brave. It's saying that your relationship with the landscape outside is more important than the wall space inside. That's a statement most RV manufacturers would never make because it's commercially risky. In an AI-generated concept with no commercial pressure, it's the right call. And I think it's genuinely ahead of where the production market is going. What seems impractical? Honestly, the engineering complexity of those compound curve exterior panels at this scale would be extraordinary. The manufacturing cost alone in any real-world scenario would be staggering, and that continuous glass section, while spectacular, would present real thermal management challenges. You're essentially lining your living space with solar collector glass in summer conditions. In Arizona in July, that space could become uninhabitable without a truly serious climate control system working constantly. Not impossible, but it demands a very honest engineering answer. What would I change? I'd push the rear design further. From what we can see in the three-quarter view, the rear resolves competently but doesn't match the drama of the front. The front of this concept is a 10 out of 10 in visual presence. The rear feels like a 7. For a concept designed at this level of ambition, the rear deserves the same treatment as the face, because in real life, the vehicle behind you on the highway is seeing that rear constantly. It should be as memorable as every other angle. What does this say about where luxury mobility is heading? It says that the line between vehicle and architecture is dissolving. The best concept designers are no longer asking, how do we make a motorhome look better? They're asking, what should a home that moves look like if we designed it from scratch? That's a fundamentally different question, and concepts like this are the first rough answers. This will never exist exactly as you've seen it today, and that's honestly fine. That's not the point. The point is what it makes you imagine. And for that, this concept absolutely delivers. Now here's my question for you in the comments, and I genuinely want to know. That continuous glass wall running the length of the living section, dream feature or design problem? Because I can see both arguments clearly, and I'd love to hear where you land. Drop it below. I read everything. And if this kind of deep dive concept analysis is what you come to YouTube for, there's a lot more of it on this channel. Hitting subscribe is the easiest way to make sure the next one finds you. I'll see you in it.